Good morning. Have you ever wondered who really has access to your most critical systems? What if I told you that in many organizations, users retain access long after they have left and nobody notices? Welcome to the world of Identity and Access Management, or IAM, the silent guardian of modern enterprise security. So, what's IAM? Well, IAM is not just about logging in with the username and password, it's about making sure the right people have the right access to the right resources at the right time and for the right reason. It covers everything from how users are onboarded, how their access is managed and reviewed, and how it is revoked when they leave or change roles. In simple terms, IAM helps you control who can do what in your digital ecosystem. In today's world of remote work, hybrid cloud, and sophisticated cyber threats, IAM isn't optional, it's mission critical. Weak identity controls are often the first step in a breach. Overprivileged accounts, shared credentials, and incomplete offboarding are recipe for disaster. Effective IAM helps ensure compliances with laws like GDPR, HIPAA, SOC, and India's DPDP Act as an example. Effective IAM helps ensure security through controls like multi factor authentication, single sign on, and zero trust principles. It also helps ensuring an operational efficiency via automation and self service. IAM is made up of several key pillars. Starts with authentication, which is proving who you are through passwords, biometrics, MFA, or even passwordless methods. Second, it's about authorization, which is about granting only the access needed using model like RBAC, which is role based access control, or ABAC, or attributes based access control. The next pillar is provisioning and deprovisioning, which is automating user access at every stage of the identity lifecycle. Next is access reviews and certification, which is periodically validating that access is appropriate and compliant. Next is privileged access management, which is about securing admin and root level accounts to prevent abuse. Or next is the federated and decentralized identity, which is about managing identity across systems, clouds, and even broader securely. Imagine an employee changes department from finance to HR. A well groomed IAM system will first automatically revoke the finance access. It will then prompt HR access requests with approvals. It will log everything for audit and even notify the IAM team if something seems off. Or consider a remote contractor logging in from an unknown device at midnight. An IAM system with behavioral analytics will flag that as suspicious and limit access or prompt for re verification. Modern IAM is evolving fast, and we are seeing AI and ML used to analyze behavior and detect identity risk in real time. Just in time access that grants temporary access only when needed. Zero trust IAM, where no access is trusted by default, not even internal users. Or we're also seeing a cloud native IAM like the Microsoft Entra ID, Okta, Ping Identity, SailPoints, IBM Verify, and CyberArk, to name a few, each providing unique strength for today's digital enterprise. Now, if you are building or improving your IAM program, should focus on automating joiner, mover, lever workflow. You should focus on regular access reviews and their certification. You need to focus on mandating MFA for all users, or cleaning up identity sprawl, or managing machine identity and service accounts, and then aligning the IAM controls with compliance framework like ISO 27001 or NIST and CIS. IAM is not just an IT function, it's a strategic enabler of digital trust, risk management, and compliance. If you are serious about cybersecurity, start with identities. If this breakdown helps you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your team. Drop your questions or topics you'd like me to cover in the comment below, and I'll see you in the next video and the parts of this. This is your host, Savit Vittal Salian, with permission from my mentor, Sri Ganapati and Mr. Vakratund. Welcome. Namaskar. In the rapidly evolving digital landscape, identity and access management has emerged as a foundational component of enterprise cybersecurity and regulatory compliance. As organizations increasingly migrate to hybrid and cloud first infrastructure, the complexity of managing user identities, roles, and access rights across diverse ecosystems has intensified. IAM systems aim to ensure that only authorized users have appropriate access to critical resources, thereby reducing the risk of breaches, enforcing compliance, and enhancing operational efficiencies. This video dwells into the principles, components, technologies, framework, challenges, and best practices surrounding IAM, with a special emphasis on regulatory alignment, security postures, and enterprise scale implementation. In simple language, in today's digital world, identity and access management plays a very important role in keeping systems and data safe. As companies move to cloud systems and allow people to work from anywhere, it becomes harder to manage who has access to what. IAM helps solve this problem by making sure that only the right people can access the right systems at the right time. IAM is not just about username and password. It includes tools and rules that help businesses to check who someone is, which is actually authentication, or decide what they can do, which is authorization, or give them access when needed, which is provisioning, or take away access when they leave, which is deprovisioning, and keep records to show who did what, which is actually auditing. IAM helps organizations reduce security risk, meet legal and compliance requirements, and work more efficiently. In this video, we will explore what IAM is, how it works, the tools used, the challenges faced, and how it supports business goals in a digital world. What is IAM? Identity and access management is a framework of policies, processes, and technologies that facilitates the management of digital identity and governs access to systems, data, and applications based on their roles and responsibilities. The core objectives, there are five: authenticate users and devices securely, authorize access based on least privileges, manage identity lifecycle, which includes provisioning and deprovisioning, audit access patterns for compliance and governance. Next, enable secure business collaborations, whether it's internal or external. Let's look at each aspect of it in detail. Authentication means verifying that the person or device trying to access a system is who they say they are. If you look at a step to step as to how does this work, it starts with defining the authentication policy. That's your organization's policy. In that, you decide what kind of authentication is required for different users, namely the staff, the vendor, and admin, and maybe each department. But that is what you as an organization need to define in your authentication policy. Next is setting rules based on risk, that is, higher level account requiring stronger authentication and so on. Even that you have to define. Followed by implementing multi factor authentication or MFA, which is use at least two of the following: something you know, example password; something you have, which is a smartphone or a token; or something you are, which could be a fingerprint, a face ID. Do remember, something you know, something you have, or something you are. Use at least two of these three. That's multi factor authentication. Once that is done, use a strong password control, which is about enforcing what is the minimum length and the complexity. Then ban reuse or common passwords. Then implement password expiry and history rules. So this is your step 3. The step 4 includes enabling single sign-ons or SSOs, then allow users to log in once and access multiple applications securely. That brings your efficiency. And use identity providers like Microsoft, Entara, or Okata using SSO support. Once you reach there, then you register and verify the devices. Link trusted devices to user accounts. So which asset belongs to which user, or which user can access that asset. Use device certificate or secure tokens. Regularly validate device posture, which means check your patches, your antivirus, your encryptions. Once you achieve this, then you have to go and enable risk based authentication, which is also monitoring the context like the location, device, and the time that asset is accessed. Trigger extra verification if access is from unusual conditions. Namely, a person is not supposed to log in at that time of the day or evening or weekends or from that location. That's what this means. Then, as the next step is to log and monitor authentication activities and track all login attempts. success as well as failures. Alert on suspicious pattern, example login from two countries at once. Once this you have achieved, you move and review and update your authentication methods. Regularly assess which methods are outdated or vulnerable. Update systems to support modern standards like the FIDOS 2 or web authentication, and then move to passwordless authentication. I hope these steps helps you. You can pause here, take a screenshot of this if on the steps. Then you can check against your own company policy as to where do you stand and which part is already at play and which part you think is relevant and can be implemented at your own organization. So this should help you with a thought process as to how you can plan around this. This is a step-by-step guide to securing your authentication. Let's look at a checklist again. First is define authentication policy. This is where you define your roles and systems and are mapped to require authentication levels. Then you go in for MFAs enforced for all users, especially the admins, wherein you also define your password length, complexity, rotational rules. You have to define that and should be in place. Do remember, this is a checklist. This is something which could be part of your policy, a guidelines, or a mandatory requirement. You can take a look at your current and see how many of them are already in play and what else is required. Once that is done, user access apps securely via a central identity provider, which is your SSO. Trusted devices are verified and monitored. Ensure that you have that mechanism in place. Then it's about context aware authentication, which is risk based login. In geolocation, time, IPs are active. You have to ensure that is in place. Check out whether the authentication logs are monitored. The idea is to log every activity. And more importantly, after log, there should be a review process. Do note, most of the time this is reviewed post an incident, too late in the game. Check out what is required to get this review on a regular basis so that you are not doing it after an incident when it is already late and it's more of a post-mortem. You want to avoid the situation to come in place the first. Hence, have that process and policy in place which will help you trigger a pre-check or a regular check. Next is you enable your MFA setup. Make it self-service so that user can manage their own MFA settings securely, of course, based on your policy. Check your third-party authentication. Review, wherein vendors and contractors login methods should meet your enterprise standards, not their. Yes, if they have a standards which are much higher, much more refined than yours, by all means, but it shouldn't be lesser than what you have. So yours is a baseline. It can be higher than your baseline, which is good, but it cannot be lower than yours current policies. Ensure that you have an incident response process ready in case of a breach. There should be a playbook which defines how compromised accounts or failed logins are going to be dealt with. Then do review your authentication method at least annually or quarterly to be the best way to ensure that you catch things early on. Now this also helps you to keep up to date. As this stream is ever evolving, newer methods of breaching comes into play. So having a periodic review helps in a long way to secure our organization. Next, authorize access based on least privilege. Least privilege means giving users only the minimum access they need to do their job and nothing more. This reduces the risk of accidental or intentional misuse of systems and data. Do note in this ever changing world or the complex world that we are in, You might have one branch somewhere at the end of the globe. It can be used to compromise. So it is no more an attack is happening at your head office or at your core location. A breach or an entry can happen at the remotest locations where you are not regularly monitoring. Hence, the policies and procedures should be applied across the globe, across all your locations. Authorization should be not just at a central location, it should be across, because one entry point is good enough to compromise. Let's look at the steps involved in enforcing your least privilege access. It starts by defining the roles and responsibilities. This is the key. Here, roles and responsibilities about the individual and also of the assets. It's important that you rank your assets, prioritize, categorize it. Similarly, users. A more granular categorization helps you to have a granular, tighter control over how you are ensuring that privileges are just right for that particular user against that asset. Understand what each role needs to access to. An HR might require access to the HR database. They might need a front end, their people management software. But they have no role to play when it comes to database administration. They would need the database for getting the information using their tool. But direct access to database? No way. So understand what each role requires to perform their defined function. Create a role catalog and link access permission to the job function. Next, implement RBAC, which is role based access control. Once done, then assign access to the roles instead of the individuals. So you have an individual, you have assets. Then you categorize according to the group. That is a group. For particular role, there is a group. Then assign the staff to that group and assign the access to the group, so that when an asset is added to the group, automatically all the rights come in. If the user is added to the group, the user gets the group rights. It's not individuals getting it. Yes, you categorize individuals onto what role they are playing. Next step is when users change role, their access updates automatically. So basically, if that is done, so next time when you move the user, you don't have to change the access rights. It automatically is taken off the moment it's out of the group. And when you place it into a new group, the new access rights automatically get assigned to the individual user. So that saves a lot of time. You don't have to create every time. Once created, you can govern it. Next is use attribute based access control for complex cases. That is using dynamic rules, which could include location, time, department, to allow or block the access. Example, a user can access sensitive data only during business hours from a corporate device. So that's how attribute based access control works. Then enforce time bound and just in time access, which is granting temporary access only when needed and remove it automatically afterwards. That's time bound and just in time access, especially important for admin or privileged accounts. Moving forward, once you achieve this, then apply segregation of duty or SOD. That is to prevent one person from having multiple conflicting powers. You shouldn't have a situation where the creator, the implementer, or creator or approving payment services are done by the same person, where the maker and the checker is the same. You don't want that situation. So hence segregation SOD is critical so that rights do not overlap. Once you achieve that, then you conduct access review and certification or recertification. Just giving it once doesn't mean it is dusted and done. You need to regularly review to ensure that the relevance when it was originally put up is still there. If not, this is a time when you do a review and do a recertification. That is, managers and system owners review the access rights regularly. Ideally, quarterly it is to be done, if not semi annually. Do note the risk here. Some might argue that let's do it once in a year. What it means is, supposing you have done something in January and the user has changed his role in February, you would only come to know 11 months later. Do you want that situation where there is an exposure to your organization for 11 months? Hence, a quarterly is recommended. If you have an automation tool which can do it at a lower frequency, fantastic. But at least if it is manual, which is mostly the case, do it at least once a quarter. So you have 4 reviews in a year. Remove access that is no longer required. That should be the outcome of the recertification. Next, automate the access provision. Now, this is currently done in most of the organization with newer tools coming in more efficient. If not, you have to work towards that goal. Use IAM tool integrated with example HR systems to automatically assign and remove access based on employment status or role change. That should be your motivation for next step. The moment this is in place, a user joining in gets the right category of groups, hence gets the right category of rights, hence he can access those assets. The moment the staff moves out and it is taken off from one of the systems, automatically all the associated rights and accesses are revoked. That's automatic. If you do it manually, assuming you have a couple of 100 people a month moving in and moving out, think about the workload. Hence, automation is the only way forward. Monitor for excessive or abnormal access. Now, what's excessive and what's abnormal is based on what's your baseline, what's your definition. If you had done that in your step 1, you would have this easier, otherwise it's not going to work. Use IAM reports or behavior analytics to detect users with access that they shouldn't have. Identify dormant accounts and privilege creeps, that is access accumulation over time. Now, this is a standard challenge, a normal challenge that is seen across. User move roles, but the roles are not revoked in the system and they continue to have access. And a user, if he has moved few roles in their career, imagine the number of access he has accumulated. Virtually everything might be open for him because he was playing a role in multiple departments as part of his transition within the group. You don't want that situation to be in. Let's look at a checklist. The first is role and access needs documented. That is, each job role has a defined list of required systems and data. That's your policy, that's your process, that's your procedure, that's your checklist. That should be in place before anything else comes into play. Otherwise, you cannot work on the system. Map the users to roles that have specific permissions. Access decision should include the context, the department, location, time. Need to have time limited access is used for sensitive roles or specific tasks. That is enabling just in time access, ensuring there is SOD, that is segregation of duty, ensuring the role based access are in place. Ensure you have a regular recertification. Check against yours. What is your current review schedules? Review your access, what accesses are there and are they excessive or just as required. Clean off your orphaned account. Do you have a process and policy in place for this? If not, it is time to get that. Automate your process as much as possible, which is joiner, mover, lever process, so automatically, so that you don't have to do that manually. It's simply not sustainable. Ensure you have a break class account and they are controlled and reviewed post use. But that is part of your emergency access procedures. Do you have it defined already? If not, it's time to define it. High risk accounts should be monitored and reviewed more frequently. Now, for this, do you know which are your high risk accounts? Do you have a clear definition for high risk accounts? How does high risk account look like in your organization, for your systems, for your group. If this is not in place, then you will not reach this. Hence, you have to first define what a high risk account looks like, what it entitles to, what is the risk that is considered as high, what is high, what's medium, what's low. That is something that you have to look at your organization policies. First, check whether there is a policy around this. If not, define that. All said and done, if whether it's working or not, it should be logged. There should be logs maintained for all of these. Because how would you know whether things are working or not working or how efficiently it's working? That's where the log comes in. But do note, just having a log doesn't help. You need a log management process. You need a process, you need a team or a tool which will review the logs and throw out anything which is a deviation as an alert to you or a notification so that you can act. I've seen organizations having amazingly enabled log management, which is they have logged anything and everything that happens in the organization, but surprisingly, no monitoring around it. The logs are dumped and dumped into the systems, tons of it, megabytes, petabytes of it. But when it comes to review, it's only done post an incident. Too late in the game, so much of time and effort and energy, investment of money gone down the drain because while you have logs, you have consumed the bandwidth across your networks, resources, but it's a waste because it is there in a black hole and no one is looking at it. So, what's the use? Only use at that point of conversation would be, oh, for an incident we have done it. You could have avoided that incident. So, one is enabling the log. Then, second, ensuring the logs are stored. Third, important is reviewing those logs periodically. All of these matter in this whole life cycle. Provisioning and deprovisioning. Identity lifecycle management means handling user access from the moment a person joins an organization while they are employed until after they leave. Doing this well help reduces security risk, improve efficiency and ensure compliance. Let's look at the life cycle here on how to manage. Starts off by integrating IAM with HR and IT systems. Then you connect the IAM to the HR system so identities are created and updated automatically. Ensure changes in employment status reflect immediately in access rights. Now think through about it. Why from here? Well, you have assets. The assets should be there in your asset database, which is your CMDB, which is your asset management process. On asset management, I have a different video. You can have a look into that and see whether that helps you. Having said that, once your assets are in the play, then you come to people. The people related aspects comes into the HR system. Now, once you integrate your people and their asset, what it means is you have a staff who joined. The staff is a particular department. While onboarding, you selected the department. The moment you select the department is mapped to various assets. If your categorization in your CMDB is correct, this asset can be accessed by these departments or these groups. Then, if that group has been assigned rights and roles and responsibilities, automatically the staff who joined gets those rights and access. You don't have to do a manual activity. Hence, integrating your HR with your IT asset system or IT systems makes a big difference. Then, about automatic provisioning, which is when a user joins, the IAM system creates the user ID, assigns the correct roles and access based on the job titles and department, sets up email, application, account, and device access. The next step is to manage access changes, that is, movers. So the staff has joined, played his role in a particular department. In 6 months, 1 year, 2 years' time, he moves role. So when the user changes department or role, IAM automatically removes the old access. Do remember, they have to remove the old access before new access or new roles are permitted for that users. Check your systems whether it is doing it, or is it piling on, which means a user has access to 10 systems as part of his role A. But when he moved to role B, he gets another 10 access, but the original 10 access are still there. That's adding on, which is not required because that is not what the role he is playing in the current. The new role requires only access to those 10 assets or 10 rights. But is your system smart enough, or have you configured the system in a way wherein before new accesses are given, old accesses are removed? So it should be removed first and add later. It shouldn't be adding on and on. Do note, we would not even notice in most cases if that is happening because the new guy would keep on working on his new system that he's interested in. The manager would not know about that he has older access till the time a recertification is potentially done if you have a recertification process. Otherwise, he keeps on adding rights. So, this process, the critical aspect of this is removing the old one before the new rights are given. Avoids privilege creeps like user collecting too much access over time. That's what we discussed. Moving on to the next step is automate the deprovisioning. That is when a user leaves the IAM system, immediately disable access to all the systems that was given as part of his rights to work. Revoke the credential access, badges, VPNs, email, cloud access, anything and everything. This can only be done if you have a system in place. Otherwise, it would be a challenge to go and look at each right that an individual has because that is how your system is set up. But if it is automatic, the moment an ID get deleted, every right, every access should automatically get deleted. That's part of your integration. If it is not seen, it means it is not there, no matter what the claim is. If you as a manager are receiving a monthly report which says, can you check whether a particular user has rights relevant, and you do that, though it looks good, it's a good control, but you have failed, the organization has failed because this should not have come to the manager in the first place. It should have been revoked as part of his exit. Why should a manager go and check whether the rights are required? Of course, it is not required. The staff has moved out. So, why should a manager require to enable or review an access of X staff? If you see it, it means the system is not working. So, this is a question mark to the team managing the system, which in one hand there might be a claim that the system is fully automatic. On the other hand, you see if that is automatic, why is the manager being asked to review? It shouldn't, because it should automatically be off. Next is review the orphaned accounts. Now, this review shouldn't be with the manager. The question here is if it is coming to the manager, it's the indication the system is not working because orphan should have been taken off the moment ID has been deleted from the system, from the HR. It means the integration is not done clean, or it's not in place, or simply not thought through. Need to run, of course, you can have a detective control of doing an additional review, but ideally it should be zero because if the system is working, you wouldn't have any orphaned accounts in the first place. Next is run periodic report to detect accounts that are not linked to any active users. Now, this is a possibility, an indication of upstream process which is failed. Most of the time, orphaned accounts are linked to a manager because some staff had used it and the upstream process has not been working. Hence, the manager has to do a review. The manager is made guilty of having exceptions under him when he is not the person who implemented the system in the first place. He is focused on some other deliveries in the BAU. So the question should be at the higher end of the system, of the process, who are implemented or who have implemented the systems. Immediately disable or delete these accounts. But more importantly, if a manager has identified it, he triggers that he done his job. But then he needs to ensure that the message goes back to the system owners, that is the system which is managing the ID and access management and the integration part, that the upstream process has failed Though you as a manager has caught it, the upstream process has failed. Hence, in spite of a staff moving out, there are orphaned accounts. How come that is possible in the first place? So that shows status of the maturity of the model. If a manager has to catch an ID deletion or orphaned account or an unauthorized pylon of rights, it's an indication that upstream has failed. The next is use self-service portal for access request. That is, after the initial accesses are given to the new joiner should be able to raise a self-service request for anything that he needs. While if your system is fully integrated, he would get all the access that is needed as part of his deliveries. But in case there are additional deliveries which is understood post joining, then the user need to have a self-service mechanism in place. A fully matured organization would not require even these, because once a particular type of services are mapped to a user, the right should have automatically come. From a management perspective, we should look at how many self-service requests were raised by a user, and the question should be why a self-service request was raised. Why is that user not getting it as part of a virtue of his role? So which part of the system which indicates that that system is not integrated to your overall IAM system? The idea should be to put up a project or a process wherein that systems or those systems can be integrated. If you don't do it, you end up losing a lot of time and energy of raising a request, passing through a process flow. There's a time delay. There's a requestment of the management to come in for approving that access, reviewing it, doing a recertification. So much of time and energy is a leakage in this. You could have addressed all of this by just ensuring that every system in your organization are integrated where possible, of course. Next is allowing users to request access through portals, route requests to managers and system. We discussed this, wherein if you don't have an integration in place, you will have a challenge. Every time a request raises, it goes through a lot of process, and time and energy automatically gets invested into that. A waste of time and energy, actually. Next is monitor and audit lifecycle events. Log all provisioning, changes, and deprovisioning activities, and use IAM dashboards for compliance reporting. Check out every aspect of this process flow and see which part of the process requires revisit or integration. Let's now look at the life cycle checklist. HR system integrates with IAM. That's the first one. That is identity creation and status changes are automated via HR feed. Next is new user receives proper access based on roles and locations. When you say checklist, you check against your. Is it in place or is it a gap? Use this checklist to review your current position. Check out changes in role should trigger access revocation and assignment. Is it happening in your system? If the answer is no, think through what is required to get it in place. User access is revoked upon termination on the last working day. Is it the case today? If not, what's required? Access entitlements mapped clearly to job functions. The first step is there a job function clearly defined? Are every job function in your organization defined? Are those job functions mapped to entitlements? Are those entitlements involving access rights, asset rights, privileges? Are those clearly articulated and defined? If not, you have a big role to play there. Check out, automate your account and permission creation. Is it automatically or it require a manual intervention? If it is manual, there's a big opportunity to get this automated. Check out accounts with no active owners or are disabled or deleted. Orphaned accounts. How many orphaned accounts you have? How many accounts have no known person? Or how many systems have no one looking at it or having access? That means, are these systems waste? If no one is accessing it, there is no IDs mapped to it, then what is that system doing? Decom it if required to. Or are there IDs which are not mapped to any devices? any assets, then it indicates it's an orphaned one, which indicates that your upstream process has failed. That is your HR process. The system has not cleaned up its act. That means the staff has moved out, but its rights are still there in the system, which means the handshake has not worked at all. Even one ID is an indication of a flawed system. One ID. Check out whether your user request for any additional access with approvals are they self-service. If the answer is yes, fantastic, but it's not good. Because why would any user require additional access if your provisioning has been done correctly? Every possible combination of a person's requirements are been addressed initially, then you don't need the self-service in the first place. Of course, self-service option should be available, but it also indicates that if people are using self-services for getting access to assets, which means their roles are not clearly defined in the upstream process. If that is defined, while you will have a self-service portal, no one would use it because it's not required. The initial provisioning of access is good enough for a BAU to run, or sufficient. Check out the emergency access control. Temporary or break glass accounts are time bound and logged. Check out how many times a temporary or break glass account was activated. For what purpose? Are they linked to an incident or a change? How frequently it is required? If it is frequent, it means some systems are not working that you need this frequently. What is frequency? What is frequently? That need to be defined also. What is okay for you? Once a year? Once a week? Because if you are using your emergency account, that means your original accounts are not working for some reason or there is a breach. This is one of the thresholds that would be there in your risk management process. How many times an emergency account has been activated? That itself is an indication of a failure in the upstream process. Log all the events: create, change, disable, delete. All of this should be logged. Then a reconciliation is required to check out are there any mismatch. Check out post deletion or removal of a user. What is your definition of what's the policy that you would enforce that beyond particular day all the other data related to that account get be cleaned up? One is disabling, one is deleting. Disabling could be many reasons. Deleting is never to be used again. So, do you have a mechanism and a policy in place? The next aspect on governance template. Automate identity creation and update using real-time data from the HR systems. Do you have that mechanism in place? Provision using user accounts and entitlement immediately upon joining based on the job roles. That's where the HR will come into play. That's where the department heads will come into, because they are the one who will define the job roles, shaking hands with the HR, and then integrating into the system. And then each job roles will have groups. The groups will have entitlements. Good groups will have a defined role and responsibility on what rights they have. Are they in place? Adjust access right when user changes role. Do you have a process in place? Is it manual? Is it automatic? That should be one trigger point for sure that the user is moving. But post that, all the rest of the entitlement should be automatic. But is that the case? Or do you need to raise self-service for getting certain rights? It indicates a lower level of maturity in the process. Disabling or removing the access the same day an employee or contract leaves. This is one of the checklists that need to be put in place. Map the job roles to standard set of access rights. Use IAM platform to reduce manual effort. Detect and remove inactive or unlinked account to reduce the risk. Allow users to request access through a secure and auditable self-service interface. Do note, this is your governance template. These are the things against which you will ensure that you have a proper set of controls in place. You are governing the whole life cycle. How you can do it, this is a checklist to be used. Compare your IAM record with actual system data. This is to catch any mismatch. Apply your data retention policy to deactivate account in accordance with your compliance rules. First of all, do you have a compliance rule in place? Do you have a policy in place on how or when you would deactivate, when you would disable, when you would remove? If not, this is the time to do it. Auditing access patterns means tracking, analyzing, and reviewing how users access system and data. It helps detect policy violations, security threats, and gaps in compliance with laws and standards like the GDPR, SOX, ISO 27001, and DPDP as an example. So now let's look at how do you audit access patterns for compliance and governance. We'll go through a series of checks or steps. The first is identifying critical systems and data. So first you have to know your own assets. Then you have to map the assets according to what is critical, what's not critical, a high, medium, low. That defines your organization structure. Your organization would identify your services which are the most critical one, medium or low. Based on that, for those services which are the assets mapped to. Hence, that criticality should flow downwards to the assets. It starts from the business. From the business, it maps to the assets which is supporting the relevant business. And hence, from that asset, who are the users who are going to access that assets. So, if a particular business is or section of a business is critical, all assets that supporting that business also becomes critical. And any user accessing the asset also becomes critical. In the sense, higher level of controls would be expected of from that user or that access. So that's how the story will be there, will be playing. So first question is, have you as an organization or has your organization defined what's the most critical business? Which are your crown jewels in your organization from a business unit perspective? Because it flows from there. You can't have a system which is marked as low and a user marked as high, or vice versa. It's going to cause chaos. So hence, identifying critical systems and data are key before we move on. We need to list applications and data sources that contain sensitive, financial, or regulated information. Example, the ERP, CRM, HRMS, core banking systems, cloud storage, etc. Step 2, you need to enable logging and monitoring. Make sure systems and IAM tools log all the access events, whether it is login, whether it's access, whether it is administrative or admin activities. Use a centralized logging platform, for example, a SIEM or a dashboard for visibility. Next, define what to monitor. Do note, logs can be enabled for anything and everything that happens in the system. Let it be so, but what you would like to know, which are the one? Do you want to get drowned in all the logs, or do you intend to see those are the ones which are most critical, which can impact your business? That definition has to be very clear. This is where a collaboration between the business and your technical team and the tools team will come together to get to the right definition. Because once you define it here is where it will come into action into what rules that you need to enable to trigger an alert. Focus on key access behavior. Who accessed what, when and from where, or was the access allowed or denied? The easy win is a denied should raise a flag to figure out who did it and why was that access requested in the first place. What was the intent behind? Your system did the right job by denying, but you as an organization should have a policy to review, deny first. Those which were denied could be a source of interest for you to see if there are any breaches. Also need to look at whether any privilege accesses were requested or used. What was done as part of that request of privilege access? Moving forward, set up alert for anomalies. As I said, the logs will be generated for anything and everything in the system. Of course, you have to define it, better defined for all. But then, alert should be configured based on the knowledge and information that you have put together between your tech and your non technical team, which is a business. Create rules or alerts for unusual activities like access outside business hour, login from foreign locations or unknown locations, or logging from multiple locations at the same time, or sudden change in the access pattern. These are things that need to be created as rules for generating alerts so that you can prioritize those alerts or log reviews. Conduct periodic access reviews. Ask managers and system owners to review who has access to what. Revoke unnecessary access or flag excessive permission. The next is audit privileged access separately. You have access and you have privileged access. Privileged access should go for more detailed scrutiny or review to see why it was requested, what was the need for it. You need to ensure that you have a mechanism. The ideal way is you need to have a monthly review of a sample of privileged access. Take a sample, a 5% or a 10% or a number that suits your organization's volume. Check out why privileged access was needed. Why are general access for your BAU not sufficient enough? Or have you not defined it adequately enough that every now and then your privileged access is the only one which is required to do your BAU? In that case, then you don't have the right level of granularity in your system. Privileged, as the name suggests, is only for specific, for rare occasions for doing certain activities and restricted activities. Activity which can potentially disrupt your business. Hence, it is referred as privileged. If you're using privilege for anything and everything in your BAU, it's no more a privilege. Now, that is something for a review that you should go and do a back-end check and integrate it properly. Break the access if there are access required multiple times in a day or multiple times, then you probably don't have the right granular control there. Time to chop it off, make it into smaller pieces. Track all uses of admin and root accounts, mandatory, because these are things which can be compromised and you could compromise your systems and business. You don't want that to happen, hence you need to have that level of review. Use session recording and just-in-time access. Ideal way to work. When you say just-in-time, the definition would be already be there. There would be some start and end point of that activity which would have been approved by you. And that's good control. Next, document and report for auditors. You need logs. You need all of the reviews that you would have done, whether it is conducting periodic access reviews or auditing your privileged access or tracking your admin or checking out the sessions or whether just in time was enabled or checking out how many people logged in from foreign accounts, how many people logged in from multiple accounts at the same time. All of this need to be documented. Why? Because that's a document which would be required during an audit review to ensure that things are in control. You know what's happening. This is a way to ensure that you have given confidence to your stakeholders, whether it's internal, external, or regulator. This document gives credibility to your process. Maintain record of access reviews, policy exceptions, incident response. Ensure audit logs are retained according to compliance standards. Now, some might be required or the standards would be defined by the regulator of each country or there will be a global regulation. If you are a multiplayer, multiple location globally, you would have to consider all of those. Some countries might have 1 year log. Some might define 3, 5, 10, or some might say have no timeline at all, which means you have to keep it till time. So You need to know what is the field you are playing on and what is the rule of the game. And do note, geography based rules are the most complex and the most difficult one. Hence, you have to take the most difficult in your play. That is, if a country says 20 years and one country says 5 years, better keep the lock for all the 20. You never know. So, that is how you should look at it. Now, let's look at a checklist for compliance and governance. Starts off with all critical app and data source should be listed for audit focus. All user activities should be recorded. Check out, do you do that? Logs should be collected centrally. Yes, centrally. Avoid keeping logs locally because once you have centrally, you can govern it centrally. Having said that, there could be some country logs or requirement where the logs need to be retained as a country. So be it. Now, do read the regulation of the country. If they say it has to be within a country and cannot go out, there is no other way to manage it out. But if the regulator says the logs need to be maintained, should be there in the country, a copy, then in that case, keep it in the country, but let it also be there in central. The moment it is central, you can have a central governance around that. If it is country, you would have little challenges around the space. Then admin actions should be monitored, controlled, and recorded. Monitored, controlled, and recorded. Define what monitoring is. Define what control is. Define what recording means. Whether you'll record the start, end, middle, or complete. So that definition need to be put in place by the respective teams, the technical teams. Check out the feasibility of it. Alert exists for odd logins. Check out, do you have a alerting mechanism first in place? Is your tool capable of alerting you when accesses of this nature, abnormal accesses are noticed? The tool might be there, but what is your threshold? Have you defined your threshold? Is one alert a good enough alert, or you need 3 alerts, 2 alerts in a day for you to trigger off? What's your definition? Business and IT owner should confirm the access appropriateness. Now, this is something that need to be done at the very start of it. Once defined, it doesn't change. Having said that, this also means that do you have a periodic review, a quarterly review, or a half yearly review? User found in unnecessary outdated access control are corrected, which means how do you know a particular ID or access are outdated or not required to? Ideally from the original system. If not, do you have a backup mechanism, a detective control in place, which could be your quarterly review? Unfortunately, if it is quarterly, which means that there is a 89 period, potential 89 days of blind spot with you. So, while we can boast of I have a quarterly review, it also shows that you might in a 90 days period, there could be an 89 days of blind spot your organization had, wherein an access was provided unnecessarily or it was outdated, and you noticed it only on the 90th day of your review. If someone is happy about quarterly review, give them this perspective. Having said that, the next is logs are stored as required for the required period. Now, this is something that you should look at based on the regulations that you are required to follow. Log 7 years, GDPR as needed. Some countries would have a specific login period or retention period. You have to ensure that you are in play. Use configuration fun users with conflicting permissions are flagged and reviewed. Do you have that in place? If not, can you? Now, what is the meaning of conflict? Now, this is something we discussed earlier. If a user has moved locations or moved roles and he still has access to the earlier roles, it's a conflict. Second condition, he is the maker, he is the checker. He is a creator, he is a approver. These are all conflicts. Do you have such conditions. It's an indication that your SOD or segregation of duties are not in place and there is a violation. Are you tracking it in the first place? The next is any temporary or emergency access is documented and approved. Having said that, all that we said earlier, there could be cases wherein you need temporary access. You need an exception to the policy. But that is an exception. This is generally done during an attack, during a major incident. But then that's recorded and documented as part of an incident. Generally and almost always it should be on back of an incident, not as a BAU. But do note, if are there exceptions happening quite frequently? A loose organization policy can trigger multiple such exceptions. A tighter control ensures this is indeed rare. This is indeed an exception. One off case. Maybe once in a year. Not necessarily even sometimes might be once in few years. But if you see there are policy exceptions and emergency access being requested frequently, it indicates an underlying issue in your process. Fix that so that you don't end up having this situation. Check out vendors and contractor access are tracked and reviewed regularly. If your processes involve vendors logging into your system for doing or supporting you, how are they governed? How are they monitored? How are they managed? These are something that need to be thought through. So take this as a checklist. You can pause the screen, look at the checklist, check against your own, see what are the gaps currently if there are any. If you have something better than this, do put up your comments so that I can think through and see if there is good enough material, can build up a new add-on to the newer video later on. But if not, check how much of these are applicable. Do note, not all are required to be applicable, but these are best practices which are generally seen across. Let's look at the audit checklist for compliance again. Sensitive data should be identified, documented. Access, all or login access should be enabled. Ensure that access events are logged across all key systems. Use your centralized login. Monitor admin or root accounts. Set up alerts for risky behavior such as off-house hours, foreign IPs, repeated login failures. Schedule periodic access certification, that is your recertification, quarterly example. Identify, remove unnecessary and outdated permission following reviews. Provide audit ready report showing user access patterns, reviews, anomalies. Follow legal and regulatory requirement for storing audit logs. It could be 1 or 7 years. Check for users holding conflicting access rights and document any exceptions. Next, log and approve emergency or temporary access separately and with clear justification. Next, review and log access granted to vendors and third party. Enforce expiration and approval workflow. I hope this checklist helps you with your planning and your strategy. With this, we have come to end of part 1. We will now look at the part 2. The scope remains the same. We are progressing as per our original agenda. We'll be going through topics and we'll be covering most of the topic via checklist. The idea behind checklist is to use it on the fly. You can take it as it is and run it as part of your BAU. Check against your current and see your current state and then figure out the target state that you want to, and you can work towards it. I hope this helps you, and I hope the future parts are also useful. So with this, I'd like to conclude part 1. This is your host, Savit Vittal Salian. Namaskar.